we'll go round and introduce those clinicians who are here and present who are going to be speaking to you this morning. So first off, we've got Heidi Lang. Would you like to give yourself an introduction?
Morning, my name's Heidi. I'm one of the physiotherapists. I currently work at the Horder Centre in Crowborough. Yeah, looking forward to chatting with you all this morning.
And then Matritara Goodridge.
Hello, I'm Matridara. I'm one of the clinical psychologists working in the pain management team, based at Leaf Hospital in Eastbourne, but also we have a site over in Crowborough as well. Hello.
Martin Reynolds.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, as you say, my name is Martin. I work for 1U East Sussex. So we deliver health provisions to the residents of East Sussex. So as long as I'm stop smoking, weight management, health checks, moving more. But so I can go through a bit more information later on.
And Martin Lau.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the other Martin. I am the Services Development Manager and Dietitian working for a national charity called Diabetes Action. So have a qualification in strength and conditioning. So I'm using that along with my dietetics to support people living.
Okay, I think we're just being joined. I think this is we're just being joined by another colleague. I think that's Dan, who is also working with 1U, I believe, has just joined us. And we are hoping that we will have Dr. Giles Hassan joining us too. He doesn't seem to have logged on yet, but hopefully.
I'm here.
Oh, you are here. There you go. So Giles, would you like to introduce yourselves as well, please?
Perfect timing, yeah. It's rare that people don't notice me lurking in the background, but hi, good morning, everybody. My name's Giles. I'm a GP, but I also work as a GP with a specialist interest in chronic spine and musculoskeletal problems, including chronic pain. So I work in the pain service in Eastbourne with Matridara.
Right, so for those of you that have just dropped on, we've gone through our introductions. Grace, who is one of our patient care advisors at MSK PE, will be monitoring the chat. If you have any questions as we go through, please pop them in the chat and then we can look at them at the end and put those through to the team that are here. Okay, so we put together a sort of set of 6 questions or so with the patient partners that I work with closely that we felt might be useful information to part onto you. So the first one is quite general, but what we'll do is I'll put the question to each of the member of our panel and they're going to offer a response and then have some sort of discussion as to, you know, what they feel might be beneficial for you in all of those cases that we've put together. So the first question is quite a general one, and it's: is there anything patients should carry on doing or shouldn't or should stop while they're waiting? For example, I know one of the biggest concerns is the potential of exercise and things like that while you're waiting and in trouble. So perhaps we could start with that one with Heidi and then we'll work around.
I think the first thing really is making sure that people know the difference between exercise and activity or physical activity. So you know, pain is mainly one of the main reasons of why you're being referred to our services, and sometimes pain, you know, can be scary and a massive limiting factor. So I think if we think about physical activity as a whole, it's any bodily movement that results in any more increased energy, for example. So that's something that you might enjoy doing, like gardening or even to the extent of playing with the grandchildren, housework, whereas exercise is that planned or structured activity. So I think it's really important that you know, you maintain and continue to do the things that you like to do, you know, whilst waiting for your appointments. So whether that is going out into the garden or playing with the grandchildren or going to exercise classes or bowls and things like that, just so that you're maintaining the movement and strength that you do currently have. And I think the biggest thing, particularly in terms of lockdown as well, is that people's behaviour often changes and people's sedentary time has also increased. In terms of sedentary lifestyle changes and things like that, it's making sure that, you know, we do regularly get up, we walk and we change position frequently. And I think most often it's the thing that we revert back to doing, because if we feel that we're in pain when we're going for a walk or doing the things we enjoy doing, we think that sometimes the best thing we can do is to sit down or to rest. Whereas from a physiotherapy perspective, that's definitely not the case. So we would definitely say, you know, continue to move as much as you can do, pacing yourself with yes, little and often changes in that, listening to your bodies, yes, by all means, but making sure that, you know, you're not too frightened by the pain side of things.
Thank you, Heidi. I'll move on to Martin Lau for that, if there's any follow-up on that in that area.
I think Heidi is saying it so eloquently. But one thing that I would like to reassure everyone, that when you experience pain when you are moving your body, that doesn't equate to more damage. I think this is really important to know. So, you know, carry on doing your exercises prescribed by your physiotherapist. Strengthening is also, well, strengthening your muscles is also quite key as well. There are some really good clinical data looking at that. If you can increase your muscle strength by more than 20%, it may have the ability to decrease pain as well. So that might be quite a motivation for you to do some of the exercises given by your physiotherapist.
Okay, thank you. Giles, have you got anything additional? I mean, I think we've potentially covered the exercise area. Is there anything else about that patients should carry on doing or stop, or, you know, that might affect them while they're waiting?
Yeah, I think it's probably just to reiterate what Heidi said, which is important about valued activities. And we often talk in chronic pain about taking a values-based approach, which is identifying what's important to that individual, and that will vary from person to person. So it's important to recognise that it might require some adaptations. So if you're a keen gardener, and you can't do, you know, the kind of heavy working over of an allotment, it doesn't mean that must stop altogether. Actually taking the chance to get outside, be in the space that gives you a sense of purpose or pleasure is really, really important. Making adaptations to valued activities to allow you to keep doing things that are important to you, I think is really key. And really building on what both Heidi and Martin have said, which is really to emphasize, without getting too boring about underlying science, our bodies need stimulation. So it can seem slightly counterintuitive that if we're in pain, we need to keep moving, but actually a lot of the structures of our body thrive and improve, and there is an element of repair that goes on because we're providing a little bit of stimulation with movement and activity. So actually it's about trying to slow down further deterioration and improve other elements of our body as well. So those would be the two areas that I'd add.
That's brilliant. And Maitradhara, have you got anything else you?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with what's gone before. I think, you know, perhaps you'd expect as a psychologist you'd add the sort of well-being, emotional well-being aspect of things, that we know that, as Giles said, doing valued activities is really important, and if those need adapting, you know, please, that's worth doing. But I think it's just sort of staying in our lives, you know, keeping a healthy balance. And we're going to touch into this with later questions, but I think it's keeping emotionally positive, because we know that has a direct impact on, you know, all our other systems, and so will help that recovery and repair and coping just generally. So that's it.
That's brilliant, thank you. I mean, I think with Martin and Wonyu, we'll come back with some more practical advice on things that we can do, which potentially might come in the next question. So what could patients start to prepare themselves to do in advance of being seen? You know, we've got that waiting time. You know, what could they be doing? So perhaps this time round we start with Giles this time.
So what can patients do whilst they're waiting?
Yes,
yeah, gosh, lots and lots. the difficulty, I think, comes with this when we're trying to apply general rules to a population where everybody will have their own individual circumstances. So I think it's probably worth saying right at the beginning that there's always a kind of that proviso of the sort of it depends. It depends because there are the comorbidities that may limit you. You might have chronic respiratory disease, you may have cardiac disease, maybe a whole host of other things that will get in the way. So we can, and I guess that's always the nature within these kind of webinars, is that everybody will have their burning question about their own individual pathologies, but perhaps this isn't the ideal forum to answer those individual queries. But there are kind of broad categories of what we can do to look after ourselves, and my colleagues I'm sure will go on to explain in more detail. But if you were to take a kind of the classic GP overview, then I'd be looking about saying, okay, if we break down what are the components that might be contributing to somebody's ill health, there are things that we can't change. There are unmodifiable factors. We can't, no matter how much we'd all love to, we can't change our age. We can't change our biological sex. We can't change our height. So there are certain elements, your kind of genetics, your inherited patterns, all of these things which may well be components that contribute to our health and the conditions that you're facing. But that's as distinct to factors in our lives which are modifiable, which we can influence. And those might include lifestyle factors like smoking, like drinking alcohol, like our diet. It may be factors to do with stress, and again you'd probably split that down into factors which induce stress and anxiety, some of which we've got control over and some of which we don't have control over. So I think really it's that long list of things: physical activity, movement, diet, as I said, smoking, drinking, all the things that we may be able to influence and change that would improve our general physical health. And the concept I'm sure Heidi and others will talk about, Martin will talk about as well, which is the concept of prehab. So not just rehabilitation after the event, but prehabilitation. How can we get ourselves into the best possible state to face surgery or face whatever intervention it may be you're waiting for, that will then speed up your recovery. So those are the kind of big ticket items, and I'll let my colleagues talk more individually about those different areas.
So perhaps in this we could jump to 1U and what they could offer for help while you wait at the moment. So Martin, and I believe Dan's in here, over to you both. I don't know who wants to take the floor first.
Okay, it's fine. So yeah, following from what Giles said, as a service we offer quite a few measures that could help the pre-rehab, as it were. So we do offer stop smoking intervention, weight management interventions I mentioned earlier, with health coaches. So we can do adult weight management wise, it's either a case of we can do it as a group, or we can do it individually, so it's remotely, so there's the option. So we'll give you a call. Alternatively, you can go and see one of our clinics. So the health coaches are there just to advise you, as I say, and then they'll get you through the program. And it kind of it gives you the opportunity, as we discussed earlier, to get yourself ready for the next or for your operations or interventions which you're going towards. As I say, it's all free, so it doesn't cost anything. It's a case of you can be referred by your GPs, any practitioners, or again, if you wanted to, you can do self-referral. So it's just a case of coming on our website, referring yourself, and then one of the contact team, support team I should say, will give you a call, have a quick chat with you, go through a process, a few questions, and then we'll signpost you to the right area that could help. So I don't know if Dan wants to add anything to that.
Unless he's disappeared. Well, thank you. What we'll do is, if Grace, are you able to share the link to 1U in the chat? But we'll share that with you afterwards as well, and you can take a look at what they do for yourself and see if there's anything that can help you there. Heidi, have you got anything in addition to add to prepare? Obviously, bearing in mind that your area will be seeing the patients probably for the first.
Yeah, so I think if you're waiting to, if you haven't seen physiotherapy before, I think it's first of all thinking about your specific pain or problem, and actually thinking day-to-day life, what certain things do I do which really aggravate my pain, and then what do I do that actually eases my pain? You could then think about that as a 24-hour period. So is there a particular pattern to your symptoms? And if it is the same things every single time that you do certain an aggravating factor, have that in your mind or write it down, for example, because it means that when you then see the clinician for the first time, you're really kind of honed into your symptoms, and then we can advise you specific things on how to manage that particular aggravating factor, for example. Sometimes if there's no clear pattern to your pain, and it can be quite random or sporadic, sometimes people quite like to jot their symptoms down in kind of like a pain diary, for example. Sometimes if people then bring that into then the first time that they see us, we can kind of, use that to kind of make a management plan for you to then go and do that at home as well. So I think having that kind of preparation side of things means that when you see a clinician and we go through our kind of normal set questions, you're already kind of prepared and have already got answers that are very specific to you and your day-to-day life. Going back to what my colleagues have already said with regards to the movement side of things, obviously as a physio, movement is really, really important. And in terms of what you should be doing as a whole, if we look at UK government guidelines, we generally say that people in terms of adults should be doing a strength component twice a week. When we think of strength, that doesn't necessarily mean going to the gym, lifting weights. That can be you walking home from food shopping, carrying your shopping bags, or choosing to walk to the shops as opposed to driving, for example. So that's the strength aspect. Obviously, the reason why you are waiting on the waiting list is because you're in pain with a particular joint, but we would say, try and get out for a walk, whether that be a 5-minute, 10-minute walk, or even just get up and change position around the house regularly, every half an hour, for example. That's just going to make your joints feel so much better and less awkward and less painful when you do then go and cook dinner, for example. The other thing in terms of as we get older is sometimes our balance can change. And so we do say also we would advise you to try and incorporate some sort of balance component to your lifestyle twice a week, whether that be bowls, gardening, or even just dancing in general around the house. And that's really, really going to help just maintain your balance and your coordination, which will then reduce, risk of falls as we get over. So I think all of that is going to tell into the forthcoming questions. But I think the most important thing is just thinking about how your particular problem is affecting you on a day-to-day basis, so that you can then share that with the clinician when you come and see us.
Thank you, Heidi. Can I add, follow that question to Mike Chitara, please?
Again, echoing what's been said, I think for us coming to see us in pain management specifically, I've sent Grace a link actually to, there's an organisation called retrainpain.org, which would probably be a useful thing to help orientate to what pain management may involve, or would involve. I think again, a lot of these questions there's overlap. So I think again we'll sort of touch into the emotional well-being again. So I just sort of pass it over in terms of time, if that's okay.
That's okay. I think that, as you said, we'll focus on those in a couple of the next questions. Martin, Lau, have you got anything to add particularly? I mean, I think we've done the movement side. Is there anything from a dietitian perspective that you think people might want to do while they're waiting that might help for them? I think you might still be on mute.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. One of the biggest modifiable risks for arthritis is actually one's carrying more body weight than they should. So I think looking at managing your weight will be the first point of call. So you have heard from from one bit about one of the services, and then you can also looking at a sort of like slightly second tier will be some of my peers in the community. Now, when you are looking at managing writers, you probably have seen a lot of different websites suggesting that different foods that it may help. I think in the general sort of terms, some of those foods that are purported to be, making symptoms worse, they are not actually, haven't got any scientific basis to it. But individuals may react to it in a slightly different way. But sort of like on the in an overall picture, you shouldn't worry too much about different types of foods. That has been said to cause your symptoms being worse, like tomatoes and things like that. I think just following a healthy, balanced eating regime will be really useful. And if you are carrying a little bit more body weight, then losing your body weight will definitely going to be the first point of call.
Thank you very much, Martin. So as we said, the next question is, you're all waiting for treatment of some kind or another, and the pain that you're in is likely to be possibly one of the biggest impacts it's having on you, and can also be quite isolating. So the question we had next was, how can people stay motivated with that when the pain could be isolating you on your own? Can I put this to my Tratara to start with, please? And you're on mute too.
Bad start. Hi. I mean, it sort of touches into sort of wider questions about sort of distress, mental health, emotional well-being. I think sort of staying motivated in the face of things. It echoes again earlier questions about how do we look after ourselves, and we've all had this wider question with kind of COVID and the pandemic and all the lockdowns. How do we stay linked in to our lives and what we value? And again, it's perhaps looking at things that are important to you, and also sort of being honest about things that have fallen away. I mean, with the isolation aspect, it's how do we stay connected with friends when maybe we've got problems with mobility, problems with being able to access sort of regular services and regular things that we're used to. I think in many ways some of these other options is how, what motivates you perhaps from today. If something inspires you to get sort of in touch with, or to start, whether that's a class or whether that's seeing a friend. And I think there's something about sort of starting a conversation. Obviously, that helps moving out of isolation, but I think there's something about naming it and starting to acknowledge that it's really difficult. It is really hard being in pain, and it's not, it can be very easy for the further problems happening where we start to feel sort of guilt or shame about how we're feeling, or how we're feeling very lonely perhaps. And so I think there's something about acknowledging that can sort of remove the stigma of sort of feeling like it's us against the world. I'll talk a bit more about it in the next question as to sort of resources and services.
Okay. Lovely.
I'll come in here, please.
Is Giles okay? Thank you. Can you take, if there's anything on there?
May I come in here, please? If you don't
yes,
mind.
You're in. Whoever's just asking to be in, you're in the lobby now, so you are here. You've joined us.
So I'm okay on talk, yeah?
Yeah, you are. So I'm just going to put you on mute.
Okay.
Dr. Giles Hassan's about to answer a question that we had on about the isolating how pain can be isolating and what you could do to help yourself. Oh, but Giles, I've just muted you again by mistake. Sorry.
Wouldn't that be great in real life? If we could just do that. I'm sure I'd be muted rather a lot. Anyway, so I think the key here is that it's very individual. So one of the things that we've all learned through the last 2 years is how we've rapidly had to apply technology in ways that perhaps we hadn't been doing beforehand. So technology is definitely a facilitator for people, and there are lots and lots of resources and groups, and I'm sure we will talk more about this as this session goes on, but support and there's some evidence around this that peer support is very important. It's all very good and well talking to somebody like me about your diagnosis of hip arthritis as an example, but there's something particularly useful about speaking to other people going through the same thing. So peer support, and that might be through any number of different organisations like Versus Arthritis, Arthritis Action UK, there's a whole bunch of them out there. But equally, that may not be for everybody. So technology, online stuff works for some, it doesn't work for others. So it's about trying to identify the way you like to interact with people, your preferred means and methods, and then thinking about what is out there to support you, whether that's picking up a phone, whether that's people that are prepared to come around and spend time with you in your home. And I think coming back to what Mike Chidara said, I think the first step is to acknowledge that you may be isolated, you may be lonely. The very first step is to identify that is a real challenge, and then thinking about what is your preferred way of managing that.
Thank you, Giles. Martin Reynolds from have you got anything potentially that comes through your services or links to that might help to keep people motivated and less isolated through the time while they're waiting?
So yeah, we can. So as I mentioned earlier about the health coaches, again, that can be done remotely, as I said, so we can give you a call, or it's a case of we are going out into the community now with clinics, so you can come in, speak to the health coach one-to-one, and they can go through sort of core behavioural change stuff with you. So looking at diet, working out, portion control, adding more fruit, veg, and then they can look at other aspects of sort of sleep patterns as well, getting you to drink less, move more, etc. So say it's just about changing those key things within your own behaviour, and they give you that one-to-one support. So you'll be able to touch base with them weekly. So it'd be a good focal point, and they've been through the journey, so they understand every client is individual, and they'll be able to tailor specifically for yourself and your needs and your situation.
Okay, I think interestingly we had a move on there, because the next questions there, we had a question about sleep has been mentioned a couple of times, and so I will jump to that one about, sleep is often something that is massively affected when you're in pain or you're waiting. Is there anything that people could do to help their sleep if they're having difficulties doing that? I think perhaps we'll jump to Giles, who is nodding.
Yeah, no worries. I'm sure there's lots that my other colleagues will jump in with. So again, perhaps if I just start with a bit of an overview about this. The first is there's some really interesting science around sleep, and in general, I would say there's a lot of, if you are interested and motivated to find out more, educating yourself, finding out more around these subjects, whether it's pain science, sleep, or whatever, weight loss, whatever it might be, it's really good to get the background information. Probably the key things I would say, key take-home points about sleep are that sleep and pain have what we call a bidirectional relationship. In other words, the worse your sleep is, the worse your pain gets. The worse your pain gets, the worse your sleep gets. None of that necessarily comes as a great surprise, but I think just to emphasize again, they've done these, us scientists are really weird. We do weird things to people and publish the papers. One of the weird things that we've done is studies where we've taken people and essentially exposed them to sleep deprivation and then seen what happens to them. This is what happens when you're a desperate student to make money. You sign up to these sort of studies. So they did that, and they found that people who are sleep deprived developed pain, and these are people who didn't have pain beforehand, so various joint pains, back pains, and so on. So really just emphasize that sleep is a really critical thing to look at. So when we're thinking about how can we manage sleep, I think, again, the first thing is to say that what we can do is create as good an environment as possible for the best quality sleep. And we need to be realistic about our expectations, because one of the challenges is whatever we do, and whatever we'll go into now in more details, is all about creating the as ideal a possible environment for sleep. It doesn't necessarily mean you're immediately going to start sleeping. These things take time. The changes will occur over weeks potentially. So being modest about our expectations is an important factor before you go into anything else. As a doctor, what I'd say is I'm going to leave my other colleagues to talk about some of the lifestyle changes to be done. But as a doctor, one of the obvious things is look at your medication and get your medication pattern right. Look at how things are balanced. We're talking about essentially a period of fasting, so you can get long periods of time. There are lots of conditions, particularly inflammatory arthritis, rheumatoid, spondyloarthropathy, these various inflammatory arthritides, which cause pain in the early part of the morning as our body's natural steroids dip at around midnight. So we end up in more pain in the early part of the morning. So looking at getting your medication balance spread out through the day, and in particular with enough to ideally give you a steady state balance through the night. So there's getting the medication right, and then there's a whole heap of environmental changes, which perhaps I can now pass the ball on to one of my colleagues to pick up on that. Who
would like to take that? Is that Heidi? Perhaps have you got anything like lifestyle wise that might help? Oh.
That was me catching the ball.
Okay, excellent.
So I think sometimes if we are in pain and we have spent quite a lot of time during the day sedentary, we haven't necessarily expended enough energy to then feel tired towards the end of the day. So I think if we do obviously move or do exercise, naturally it's going to improve our sleep as well, because we're going to feel more tired and ready to go to bed. I think finding a comfortable position is also massive, particularly for knees and hips arthritis or shoulder pain as well. So in terms of a physio clinic, we would often say, have plenty of pillows available, or extra pillows to put between the knees to offload the knee or the hip, for example, or under the armpit or around the shoulder area, just to offload that particular painful joint, can really help you get comfortable to then allow you to get to sleep. There are things in terms of reducing the amount of technology you use before you go to bed to kind of get you in that relaxed state, or reading beforehand. So I think there are lots of different things to just kind of get you in that relaxed and ready state, alongside the pain relief, definitely, and getting in a comfortable position, which should then allow the quality of sleep to improve.
Okay, lovely. Who would like to take that on next? Has my Chachara got anything to add, or Martin Lau?
I can go, Martin. Hi. I think I would just say there is floating in the messages a link to a good resource which sort of highlights good sleep hygiene, as they say, management. I think consistency, which Giles has already touched on, I think it's really tricky when you've got a persistent pain problem, because some of the management things are about keeping the environment as much as possible for sleep, and I think there can be that tendency for us all perhaps to lie there if we're awake and sort of wait to get back to sleep. What I would say is, in terms of sort of anxiety, and particularly anxiety, it's very difficult for us to get to sleep if we're in a sort of highly anxious state, and lying there stewing might seem like the only option, but it's probably highly counterproductive, because we're establishing sort of really strong patterns around feeling quite awake and quite worried in the place where we hopefully are most relaxed. So I think if we can try and break that link between sort of anxiety, low mood, rumination with the bedroom, that can be really helpful. So.
Martin Lau from Arthritis Action, I think you've just shared something in the chat, so do you want to give us a little bit more on that?
Yes, I did. I mean, the only thing that I'll add is maybe using a sleep diary, or if you are using some of the smart watches and connected to your smartphones, you will also be able to track your well. Yeah, I have to share Arthritis Action's sleep fact sheet, so please download it and have a read. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Right, so we've got 2 more questions that we'll go through, but the penultimate one, if that's correct, is while waiting, there can be a risk that you may suffer depression related to your condition. We've covered quite a lot of the things about encouraging themselves physically and mentally to try and avoid this, I think, as much of it. But is there anything further, Mike Tara, that perhaps a patient could look at when suffering from depression related to their condition while they're waiting for those appointments?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing we've really alluded to is that it's really, I mean, again, it's really obvious. It's really hard being in pain. It's really hard living with a pain condition. And it's incredibly common for people to sort of struggle with their mood, with worries about the pain and what it means. And I think there's sort of something about normalizing the distress that pain brings, as well as sort of thinking about it's not necessarily depression, and that actually there are things, as we've already touched on, in terms of well-being and looking after ourselves and trying to get back, if we've lost them, valued activities, and starting to sort of help that side of things in terms of our mood. Again, sort of quite a lot earlier in the chat, there are some links to some very good resources around compassion focused therapy, and other self-compassion organization in the States, which can be really helpful to have a look at. But I think if your mood is sort of persistently low, and you're particularly, if people are isolated, it can be really difficult. I mean, you can speak to your GP. There are also, again, there's a link in the chat to Health in Mind. You can make a self-referral to Health in Mind, which is the local wellbeing service, to arrange an assessment, and that can be a way of gathering some really specific support. I mean, again, I appreciate for some people it will be a very big struggle, and they may be feeling low to the point of harming themselves. And I just sort of like to sort of reiterate, you're not on your own. There are places to contact. Sussex Mental Health Line, which again, I think we've got a link to their number, is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service. So, you can sort of get in touch with them, or sort of speak with your GP. But I think don't be alone with it, and do feel that it's very common to have sort of depression, really big worries about pain. So people won't be surprised and will support you.
Can we stop there, please?
Oh, hello. Did someone have? We're gonna have some questions at the end, or was that for us? You had a. No. Okay. Has anyone, if I just open that one up, Giles has got something he'd like to add into that, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to add into that about from my perspective, talking as a GP, I think it's important to think about a couple of key elements which relate to mood. And again, it's complicated if you've got pre-existing low mood depression anxiety, as opposed to low mood depression anxiety that is a reactive feature to your pain condition, whatever that might be. One of the I suppose the things to emphasize again here is that for me, a lot of this is about loss of control as well. It can be a very, very unsettling, anxiety provoking, depressing entity to feel like you are just at the whim of your back pain or arthritis or whatever it may be. So a lot of what my colleagues have talked about so far has been about regaining control, not feeling like you are completely at the whim of whatever it is that you're managing. Again, the science would suggest that movement, activity, interaction with peers, these things can produce the same chemicals that are stimulated by antidepressants and can actually help lift our mood as well. So regaining a little bit of control. Again, I appreciate there are always going to be elements that are outside of our control, but there are aspects that we can have control over, can be of a benefit to our mood as well. For me as a GP, if you're getting stuck, if people aren't able to move beyond, they're beginning to lose their function. So if somebody is unable to engage in a lot of these activities because their mood is so low, they are having difficulty sleeping, they're fatigued to the point of immobility, and they're just unable to see a way through. Sometimes that is the point where a conversation with the GP about further medical management of that may be appropriate. So as Machidara said, don't ignore the crisis points. There is support, immediate support for people in crisis, but if you are getting stuck and the mood is a barrier to you engaging in some of these other things that may help your condition, that is a clear moment to have a chat with your GP, and there may be other medical management that would be suitable for you in those situations.
Okay, I think that's great on that question, unless Heidi or either of the Martins have got anything in addition to add to that one. I mean, we have, as we said, we put it all in the chat there. And the last one, which is a bit more of a general question, which we'll go around and see if anyone can offer help before we open up for a few questions, is just, obviously, are there any local support groups or support buddies that people are aware of that they could make contact with, or somewhere that they could talk for that community? It's more of a general, what does your information know about the local signposting to places that could help people? Martin Reynolds, are you able to, I mean, obviously through your service there are things, but is there anything else that might link in there?
In terms of signposting, might be worth if Dan picks in for this one, if he's happy to, as he's a little bit more knowledgeable in terms of that kind of area. I don't know if he's listening. No, he's not. So it's a case of, as I mentioned, you'd come into our service and you'd have the chat with either the triage team support or the health coaches, but they then have the tools and be able to signpost from there. So we do have links with other community groups outside of the service, so we can link you into something that is more suitable that we don't provide. So we'll be able to forward you on, as it were.
There is also, I mean, I will touch on, there is other information available through like on adult social care websites and on our, which some of the others might look in, and on our website to other groups and volunteer organisations that are around in useful patient information. Martin Lau,
I don't know if it's worth me adding a few bits.
Is that Dan?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see me or hear me.
Yeah.
So and just very quickly, I just thought I'd highlight that there is also a fantastic tool called the ESCIS website, which is ESCIS, which is Public Health County Council funded, and it's a fantastic website that anybody can use, health professionals, self-referrals, individuals, where people can go onto there and really target what sort of interventions they're looking for, where they are in the county, you know, lots of different things, not just health related, but also things like kind of refugee support or wherever it may be. So it's a fantastic website tool. Also, I'd really kind of say that they do keep on top of it in regards to services. So if they change or they're defunded or whatever, they do try and keep it as up to date as possible. So it's a really fantastic tool. And as Martin alluded to, a lot of our health coaches will also signpost onto that if it's something that we don't provide at 1UE Sussex, that people might be able to find some information on the ESCAS website as well.
Great, lovely. Thank you very much, Dan. Martin Lau, are you still with us for anything that you might have?
Yes.
Support-wise?
Arthritis Action do run what we call is the Arthritis Action Group in Eastbourne, and is facilitated by myself. Our next face-to-face meeting is going to be on the 21st of April from 2 to 4 in the afternoon over at Community Wise in Old Town. So I extend my invitation to all of you, so you can come along. Usually, what the structure of our meeting is, the first hour we have a guest speaker. And then you can stay on and have a little bit of a coffee afternoon, get to know one another, so that will provide a really good environment for people to share different ideas and so forth. So yeah, I'm just going to say it again. Our next meeting is going to be on the 21st of April, 2 to 4 p.m. over at Community Wise. All welcome.
Thank you, Martin. That's great. Has anybody else, Heidi, have you got anything in addition that you're aware of that might be useful to our patients?
I just know from a patient perspective, people do get on really well with 1UE Sussex, and they find just the contact and the regular input that they can have with them really beneficial. On the NHS side of things, there is another one called Better Health, Let's Do This, and that kind of summarises everything that we've kind of talked about today quite nicely as well. Yeah, so that's definitely what I would recommend.
Thank you. You're muted.
Yep, sorry, I lost your sound. Were you expecting me to say something?
Yeah.
There is confusion. So there's a fibromyalgia support group in the sort of Eastbourne area. Also, people might like to think about the Recovery College, which is associated with sort of mental health services, and to use, you need to have sort of identify as having sort of mental health needs, but it's very broad and people can just kind of link in. The Recovery College offers lots of different groups and programs which may be of interest to people. So I think just highlighting those, I'll put those in the chat.
Lovely, thank you. And I think finally, Giles, if there's anything further that you can, with your GP hat on, potentially, that you might advise people to look for.
I'm a big fan of Versus Arthritis as a website and a resort. I work for Conflict of Interest. I work for them a bit. So theirs is a good website to look at. I mean, there are a million different websites and groups out there, and the Sussex MSK East website, of course, has got a load of resources within it. So I think just to know there's lots out there. There's lots of useful books to read. There's lots of useful online videos to watch, and groups like Martin's run locally, I think is very valuable. So again, it's that thing of working out what suits you rather than just having. It's always tempting just to throw a whole list of websites at people, but that may not be your thing. So yeah, there's resources out there.
Thank you, lovely. That's brilliant, and I think there's been a lot of useful information there. I think what we'd like to do now is there is a few questions in the chat that have popped up. I'm happy to run through those that we've got that might be something that we can generally answer on, and if there's any more specific ones related to your specific referrals, and things like that, then obviously we can potentially address those out of here. Someone has asked, please advise how to self-refer for the physio prehab. We haven't actually at the moment got a specific prehabilitation set up, but we do, however, and it's going to be going live fairly shortly on our website, useful videos and recordings of how to do exercises and how times and things like that you can use. It's ones that we use within we've got a hip and knees booklet that we send out to people while they're waiting for operations, and we've used those exercises as a basis to help advise you on what simple exercises might be helpful for those areas, and those are going to be going live soon. So please keep an eye out. And again, some of the other websites will equally have the same thing. I know Arthritis Action sort of shares daily exercises on some of the social media, but there's things recorded on websites that would be useful for that. So as of the moment, we don't have a specific prehabilitation set up, but everything we're doing is working towards making that information available to you all. And if you don't have access digitally, you know, we can provide you with our hip and knees booklet if that was a particular area for you to take a look at. You can contact myself after this, and you know, we can sort getting one sent out to you if you think that would be interesting. Let me scroll down here. Someone's asked, what is the waiting time before I get an appointment? You are all on waiting lists for one of our advanced practitioners. So that is, and each one has a slightly different pathway. So depending on what condition you've been referred to, you've got the hip pathway, spine, hand and wrist, foot and ankle. At the moment, the waiting list for see those APs is between 14 to 20 weeks. So obviously I can't comment on when you personally have been referred across, but that is the average waiting time across those specific ones. If you're feeling you're nearing the end of that, and or your condition has worsened and you've got significantly greater difficulties, then you know, please call our team and the PCAs, and you know, we can see if there's anything we can do, and if it is significantly impacting and you are potentially further down the waiting list, have just been referred, but you feel you've significantly worsened, then you know, potentially you could get a GP to expedite or write us a letter that potentially might help us reassess and re-triage your situation. This one I can't answer because I don't know whether maybe Tara could help. This is or someone's asked, how can we answer people's statements that you don't look sick or that you're not old? You know, people who have MSK conditions aren't necessarily within that bracket, and there's a lot of, I guess, presumption from people. You know, how could someone address that? Is that something someone could answer for me?
My stock phrase for that, sorry, for it's worth as a GP, is you can't see pain, and you know, equally you can't see stupidity, but let's not get into that one. You know, that's the thing, isn't it, is that you can't visualize people's pain and disability. So it's you know, I think there are hidden disabilities of various sorts. Chidara, I'm sure you'll probably expand much more eloquently on that than I would.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there's something about it can be very emotive when people say those things. Obviously, it's very emotive when people say those things to you, and it can be helpful to have a stock phrase or a stock response that you sort of say, because I think it's very easy to get hijacked and then very upset. Either you don't say anything and you feel furious with them, or you do, or you react. You know, we all have different ways of responding, and I think there can be something helpful about maybe just almost role playing it with a friend, or just sort of and being able to signpost them to resources, because often it's ignorance. You know, how much did I know about chronic pain before I worked in it? How much do all of us know until we have the condition? So often it's not ill-intended, it's just not knowing. I think that's, yeah.
Has anybody else got anything that they might add to that? I mean, even from a patient's perspective, if there's any patients on here about what you might say in response to that, maybe some of the other patients might be interested to hear. You can put your hands up if you've got anything, or just shout out. Further questions on here. Okay, someone asked something about waiting for physio and not being able to provide treatment following a broken spine, and why can't the doctors or physios book it? I guess that's just the way the contracted services have changed over the last few years. I presume you're referring to traditionally and historically a GP such as Giles would have referred directly to for those x-rays and scans. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Giles, but that's how it used to work before MSK services were introduced. And we were developed and created now 6 years ago to try and just integrate all those services better so that we can actually have an overview and a better look across how the impact will work. Has someone got a hand up? Is that, or have you just, I think someone might just be adjusting anything. But Giles, I don't know whether you can elaborate on that further as to why it can't be booked for those scans and move forward, being that you sit there and have a look on some of our triaging aspects.
So this is riddled with personal details, which means that it's almost pointless trying to address your query, Mr. Cox, without knowing all the details. So yeah, there are general things that we can say. So as a rule, in sort of East Sussex now, it's pretty rare that GPs will order MRI scans directly, and that's generally speaking for clinical reasoning, that it's based on how it can most be used usefully in terms of influencing treatment. So MRI scans are generally speaking best ordered in the hands of people who can provide good explanations around what they mean and how it can influence treatment, and that's very often not the case in primary care. So yeah, that's been the kind of decision-making process behind that. And yeah, I think realistically, the individual circumstances need to be discussed with the person that you're going to go on and see. So if you're on a waiting list, I think take that to that first appointment within all the circumstances that can be discussed at length for you as an individual.
Yeah, and also, you know, obviously bear in mind, and if you've got any concerns while you're waiting about what they're waiting list on, you know, have a look on. You can always, you know, our patient care advisors can be happy to just give you a little bit of information about where you are on the waiting list and other things that might help, if that's okay. Grace, our patient care advisor, and just added that she said, you know, we do hold cancellation lists as well, that, you know, potentially if it is getting worse and you just would like to see if there's a possibility that you're nearing the top and it's sooner, they do hold cancellation lists if you're able to travel short notice to clinics. So again, you can phone and have a conversation about whether that's a possibility with our patient care advisors. That's the end of the questions I've got on the chat. Has anybody in the meeting got any? If you do, please put your hand up and we'll see. But as we said, if you've got any specific questions relating to your actual referral or anything like that, then we can deal with that aside from this, if that's okay. I'm not seeing any hands pop up, so I will just go through a final with our team here and see if they've got anything in addition that they would like to add. We start with Mike Tara. Have you got anything else you would like to add in addition?
I haven't, other than, you know, thank you for today. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to Rachel for organising it.
Louise had her hand up.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Someone spotted a couple of hands. Brilliant. That's great. So Louise, I believe. Thank you, Peter.
I think it would just be helpful if there was somewhere a list of numbers, who to contact, under which circumstances, and what the right pathway is, because it's a minefield for patients to try and work out what's happening to them and why. And you know, I think we can all accept that the system is now different, and yet at the same time, all of our conditions are very personal to us, and we want to interact with the system as it is, but get the best out of it for ourselves. And without being taught how to manage the system, I don't think a lot of people can.
Yeah, no, I think that's really useful feedback, Louise, and thank you. I would like to add, we have been doing a fair amount of work, and I appreciate that for those who maybe not as digitally capable or the risk of digital exclusion, you know, there's a lot of work going on our website to try and improve that information and that pathway to you know, including information on waiting times for each area, you know, and which pathways they work. So for example, knowing that you've been put on an advanced practitioner pathway and what that means and which pathway you're on, because then you can go and look at the website, you can get a bit more information about how that will work, who you'll see. So I'm hoping that will address some of those issues that you've raised. It is something that, you know, from the patient experience perspective is raised quite a lot, and we are working on improving that for you all. I see another hand, and I'm not quite sure who. Let me see. Janice, I believe, has got her hand up. Is Janice here and has got a question? No. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't unmute.
That's okay.
I've got a condition. I've slipped a disc rather than being chronic back pain, and I can't mobilise and do a lot of the stuff that's been suggested at all. I'm in so much pain. I'm in, you know, hefty painkillers and all the rest. Is there any way of letting your service know that this is more, you know, needing to be sorted because I can't walk or whatever, and I have a disability anyway?
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Please, we'll share. Grace, can you put the number in the chat for the patient care advisors, for Janice to give them a ring, and just as we've said, speak about whether or not what list you're on, and oh, sorry, it's okay. What I'll do, Janice, is I'll send you the number, if that's okay.
Thank you so much.
I'll send that number to you, and we'll get a conversation arranged on that.
Bless you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So okay, back to just filing up. Heidi, have you got anything else to add?
No, I just hope that everyone found it useful this morning, and yeah, I hope obviously everyone gets the desired outcomes that they're looking for whilst waiting to see one of our practitioners. All right.
Lovely. Martin Reynolds.
No, nothing. So I did add the link to our website in the chat.
Great.
Your colleague earlier put the link to the adult weight management, but I put everything as an overview in there.
Lovely.
I hope everyone got something out of it.
Right. Giles?
No, just say thank you and good luck to everybody.
Right. Martin Lau?
Just echoed all my colleagues this morning. Thank you so much for attending this this webinar, and yes, definitely find a way to.
Okay, I think we lost you there, Martin. Thank you. Yeah, and I would just thank you very much too. This was the first one we've run like this. So I will hopefully just send out, you know, I would appreciate any good or bad feedback coming from yourself, so I might send that out something afterwards to you all. But thank you so much for coming. I do hope, you know, it's given you a little bit more information that can help, and that, you know, you are on a waiting list, you are still here, no one's been forgotten, and we are doing our best to make sure that we get, you know, we can get you those treatments that are best for you. So thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Apologies for overrunning slightly, but yes, and the weather's not very nice for you to go out and have that nice walk in the garden that we've all been talking about. Have a good day, and thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.